So the first problem in practice sheet 2B is this one here. 18 is 90% of, and then we don't know. So we're trying to figure out the whole. We know the part. The part is 18. We want to figure out what our total is. So really you can think of it as 18 out of what? We don't know. So I'm going to start this one by drawing a model to kind of help me wrap my head around it. So I'm going to start by drawing a tape diagram, and I'm going to draw my diagram with 10 boxes. So let's see, 1, 2. And the reason why I decided to draw 10 boxes is because I know that percents are always out of 100. So if I draw 10 boxes, this whole strip, this whole tape diagram represents 100%. And I know that 100 divided by 10 is 10, which means each box represents 10%. So if you go by 10%, we've got 10%, 20%, there we have our diagram. So the whole thing is our 100%. We don't know that yet. We don't know what it is. And we know that 90% is 18. So that means that if we go all the way to 90%, that's the value that we're going to have, is 18. So if I take that 18 and I divide it into these boxes here that represent the 90%. So if I take that 18 and I divide it into those 9 boxes, I'm going to get a value of 2 in each box. So that means that as I'm going up by 2 for every 10%. That means one box, 10% of my total is 2. So I can go ahead and I can fill in my diagram and figure out what that 100% is. So here I can see I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18 at 90, which makes sense, right? 20. So that means that my 100% is 20. 18 is 90% of 20. So that's one way that you can look at these percent problems. Now, some of you are probably wondering, well, what if I don't have a percent that goes up by 10? Let's say I have 95%. So if I were to take this 90 and I were to change it to a 95%, then all I would do is simply say, well, I know 95 is halfway between 90 and 100, which means I need to take half of this value here. Well, halfway between 18 and 20 is 19, so my answer would be 19 in that case. But for this example, they just gave us 90%. So there you have one way to solve practice sheet 2B. All right, so now another way to look at this is to remember that percents can also be changed to decimals or to fractions. So if we say 90%, 90% is really 90 over 100, right? That's really our part over our whole. And we know that that is equal to this one here. We know our part. Our part is 18. We don't know our whole. So if I go ahead and set these equal to each other, 18 over our unknown is equal to 90 over 100, I can solve from here. So to make my math easier here, I'm actually going to simplify that 90 over 100 and change it into 9/10. So if I set my 18 over my unknown equal to 9/10, I can easily say, well, how do I get from 9 to 18? If you know your multiplication facts, you'll know right away that 9 times 2 gives me 18. So to get from the top numerator to the top numerator, I multiplied by 2, which means because we're working with equivalent fractions, to get from the bottom numerator to the other bottom numerator, I have to do the same thing that I did to the top, which means I'm going to take this 10 and I'm going to multiply by 2. And of course, 10 times 2 gives me 20. So that's another way that you can solve this problem. But it's not the only way. So we've discovered 2 ways so far. Here's a third way you could solve this problem, and that's by remembering that 90 over 100, or 90%, can also be represented as a decimal. So 90% is equal to 0.9, or we would read this as 9/10. Remember, because it's after the decimal point. So if I want to figure out what my whole is, there's 2 ways I can think of it. The first way is I can say, well, I know that I take a decimal, keep it color coded. I take my decimal, 0.9, and I multiply it by the whole. And that would give me the percent, 18, or the amount that the percent is, 18. So in order to figure out this number here, I know that the opposite of multiplication is division. If I want to work backwards, then I can take my 18 and I can divide that by our decimal. And my answer will end up being 20. Now there's 2 ways that you could solve this 18 divided by 9/10. You could either solve it using long division and your division of decimals rules, which if you're not sure what those are, if you go to the back of the packet, don't forget to check this page out right here, your number sense cheat sheet. Or if you can't do it that way, if you're not too confident in that skill yet, you could type this into the calculator and then give me your answer. Just remember to tell me that you typed this into the calculator. So put a little note, write calculator, calc, so that I know that that's how you got your answer. All right, so we've gone over 3 different ways that you could solve percent problems. If you're unsure, always start with trying to draw some sort of model. Start by drawing your tape diagram, get those 10 boxes down, and figure out what you know. Are you looking at the part and trying to find the whole, or are you looking at the whole and trying to find the part?